Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, it's great to be here. This is my first AppD Summit, and I'm here to talk a lot today about the direction that we're taking with AppDynamics and Cisco and coming together. But before I do that, let me just briefly introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. And my background over the last 10 years or so has been with Cisco as a general manager of various different businesses, everything from internal startups to multi-billion-dollar businesses over the course of that time. But the last role that I had at Cisco was outlining the course that we were going to take when it came to expanding our portfolio into IT operational analytics. And as part of that, we were on a journey, and that journey led us to the acquisition and the sponsorship of the AppDynamics acquisition. So I'm in this unique position where, on one hand, I've got this Cisco background that understanding the different products that are part of that portfolio and the strategy for Cisco and how to get things done, while at the same time being now part of the AppD leadership team as the Chief Strategy Officer. My role is primarily about what is the future of AppD, where do we take it over the next few years, and most importantly, how do we have Cisco help accelerate the growth of AppDynamics. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit on who is Cisco and why did they acquire AppDynamics, a bit about the deal rationale and why it's important to Cisco, and then we're going to dive into some directional areas of product integration that we're extremely excited about, some amazing new capabilities that we're going to be rolling out over the next couple quarters. So as we jump into this, we are going to talk about some things that are a bit futuristic, so I need to put out the disclaimer that some of these plans could change, but we thought it would be very, very important to provide you guys overall direction on where we're heading so you can plan as you continue to evolve your AppDynamics approach. You can think about what Cisco and AppD can do together. So for those of you who are new to Cisco, I'm sure most of you have heard of the company, but I wanted to put just a few facts up there to baseline and level set who Cisco is, particularly in the terms of the scale and size and opportunity that Cisco can provide AppDynamics. There's really two key points that I want to call out from here. Cisco is investing an awful lot in innovation. We've got 20,000 engineers that wake up each and every day trying to build the world's most amazing infrastructure products. In addition to that, we are a world-class acquirer of companies. Today marks our 200th acquisition. The acquisition of Perspica is something we're very excited about and how it brings together and accelerates machine learning as part of AppDynamics. So Cisco plays in a variety of markets. We've got leadership positions in many of them. But Cisco is very similar to many of you in the room here who is, as a company, is very much going through its own digital transformation. It's very much thinking about how to use software and custom applications to reinvent the way it interacts with its customers, what it interacts with its users. And why that's important is that we started that quest at Cisco about 5 years ago. And one of the companies that we brought in to help us with that journey 5 years ago was AppDynamics. And AppDynamics has been deployed throughout all of Cisco's mission-critical IT products, IT applications, as well as it's been deployed in many of our product offerings to help instrument our SaaS portfolio in the areas of collaboration, in the areas of security, and some of the areas in the data center. They're all leveraging AppDynamics to make that capability even better. So for those of you that are new to Cisco's portfolio, I think it's important that I lay out the foundational elements of it first so that you can understand where we see some of the integration opportunities with AppDynamics. And Cisco has very much built its heritage on the infrastructure in the network, the infrastructure in the cloud, as well as in the service provider and managed services space. And think about this from a networking point of view. Everything from switching to wireless devices to routing equipment. In the data center, thinking about servers and switches and cloud management products. And then if you think about it from a security point of view, Cisco is the leader in enterprise security with products that span everything from cloud-based security through network security, all the way out to the endpoints. And then when you think about our other multi-billion-dollar franchises, collaboration and IoT, both are large software-related businesses that are really charting the future growth of Cisco in many ways. So when you think about that core baseline of capability, it brings us to a lot of very relevant conversations that we're fortunate enough to have with many of you. And those conversations are centered around what's happening from a digital transformation perspective and how each of us as a company going through this process can transform ourselves and make ourselves smarter in using software. So clearly what we've heard over the last couple of years is that Cisco and the world is moving into an era of intelligence, a time when everything that we bring together is centered around this notion of a system of intelligence. One of the most common examples that people talk about when they talk about systems of intelligence is the self-driving car. We can all resonate with that. Most of us have seen the press about that. And I thought I would share you a story about how real this really is. Now, for those of you who live in a big city, I live in San Francisco, right outside of San Francisco, and commuting every day is very challenging. I spend about 3.5 to 4 hours a day commuting back and forth into the city. And as part of that, that is a laborious, challenging experience that almost every day I regret. But at the same time, I'm very fortunate because I drive a Tesla, and Tesla is known as the world's most advanced electric vehicle. But what's even more important and more powerful, I think, is the software intelligence that's inside of that car. For those of you that know Tesla, you know that they're known for pushing software upgrades in the cloud, over the internet, every couple weeks. So your car effectively gets smarter when you go to bed and you wake up in the morning with new capability. Well, one of the really amazing capabilities this self-learning machine has is its ability to take telemetry data from all the cars on the road and begin to make the cars that will drive in the future smarter. So let me give you an example. The other day I was taking my normal route to work, and there's this area of the road about halfway around my house that it has a lot of bumpy, kind of gravelly type of rocks and very difficult and uncomfortable to drive over that. And as I do that every day for a period of days, you kind of bounce up and down in the car, and it's a bit uncomfortable. And then one day, a couple weeks ago, I went down that same road, and instead of going through that uncomfortable experience, the car, before I got to that position on the road, elevated its suspension automatically, notified me in the dash that it elevated the suspension, and then drove through that in a much smoother way. And then reduced the suspension and continued on. Tesla is perfecting the autonomous self-driving experience. And there's so many examples of how that's doing, and people have talked about steering and cruise control and the semi-autonomous nature of the car. But that same experience, that same example can be used in all different industries, whether it's manufacturing with some of the robots that are now doing just-in-time and preventative maintenance, or even for each of us in this room who are building development and IT environments that require that self-healing, self-learning capability. So as we're having these conversations as Cisco over the last year or so with customers, it was really interesting because in many ways, Cisco has a lot of the assets to make that reality. We are the world's largest networking company. We've connected over 10 billion devices during the course of time. Most internet traffic flows through some Cisco device at some point on its journey. If you think about the data center in the cloud, we have 100,000 cloud and data center customers that are either using our servers, our switches, or our cloud management software each and every day. We've got a security portfolio that's so vast that we actually block 20 billion threats a day. 20 billion. Just put that in perspective. There's about 3.5 billion Google searches a day. So it's a vast threat intelligence database that we have. But recognizing these different components at Cisco, we were missing one critical ingredient. To build a self-healing and self-learning system of intelligence, you need to have application intelligence. You need to understand what's impacting the user, what's impacting the application, what's impacting the business journey that each and every end user is on. And so when we recognized that, the strategy was, well, we needed to make sure that we brought into the Cisco fold the most relevant, the most successful, and most important enterprise application intelligence company. And there was no question in our mind that after speaking with Bhaskar, and Jyoti, and David over the course of several months, it was very clear that AppDynamics was that company. We knew that going in largely because of the experience that we had using that product. But as we got to know the company more, and we learned about the massive data set that comes with it, the modern, most successful large-scale enterprise companies are using AppDynamics to instrument their critical applications. Those data set is driving trillions and trillions of metrics per month that can now be added to the networking, cloud, and security capabilities that Cisco has as a company. So when you start bringing that all together, now you've got the key ingredients to truly build a system of intelligence. And when you build a system like this, there's three key areas that we need to invest in. The first key area is unified monitoring. And this is broad and deep. So when you think about this, today the industry is very siloed with a lot of different monitoring tools. And it's on you as app ops, IT operations, network operations, to go through those different monitoring tools and determine what root cause is. But what if you can bring all of that data together through the end user all the way through the network and every hop in between? And then bring that data together with business context, which is extremely important. We heard today in the keynote about the importance of business journeys and the ability to understand the flow of the user through the application and what that means to your individual business. But now you take that correlated transaction and you apply machine learning to it. But not just machine learning on the application data, but taking machine learning on all of the data that we're collecting, whether it's in the network, whether it's in the security, whether it's in the data center, or whether it's in the public cloud. And then as you bring all of that data together, analyze it, grab those insights, where most monitoring tools stop is that they send you an alert telling you you have a problem. And that's all nice and good, but what if you could actually take action and do something autonomously to fix the problem? That is the Holy Grail. That's what every IT vendor in the industry is trying to figure out. And really where Cisco thrives across our networking products, across our data center products, and even our cloud management products, is we can bring a set of orchestration and actioning products into the fold that can allow us to create this self-healing loop. So it's pretty exciting stuff. So let me walk you guys through a few examples. And over the course of the last 6 months, we spent a lot of time with customers, some of you in this room. And during those conversations, we said, well, listen, there's a lot that Cisco and AppD could do together, but what should we prioritize? What are the most impactful things that we could do, and how do we go through that process? So what I want to share with you is some early direction on some of the things that we're laser focused on bringing to market so to take advantage of the capabilities that both companies have. So in order to start with that, we're going to focus on the core bread and butter of who Cisco is, and that is a networking company. We've got hundreds of thousands of customers and millions of users that use our networking products every day. And I'm going to share with you 2 key use cases that we're extremely excited about. The first, which I think is aspirational, and really we're the only ones in the industry that could do this, is what if you could provide a premium experience to your users based on the business value of the transaction or how important the user group is that's filling the transaction. Let me give you an example. As a retail bank, you have a number of high-value transactions that you care about. If somebody's transferring money from one account to another or depositing a check, as an end user, you're pretty careful about whether that's successful or not. You want to have a very delightful, guaranteed experience that mobile check deposit worked as expected. That business value, that transaction value, is at a higher level than somebody who perhaps maybe is just casually browsing on the bank website to learn a little bit more about the mortgage offerings they have. Browsing just casually and not as concerned about performance. What if we could optimize the infrastructure based on the value of the transaction? If it's a high dollar amount value transaction, could we give it a higher quality of service in the cloud or in the network or in the data center? Pretty powerful stuff. When you think about it as a user group, United Airlines is one of our biggest customers, and they've been very vocal with us in talking about how successful they've been with things like Business IQ. But United Airlines has a lot of frequent flyers, a lot of business travelers, and they want to treat those flyers with higher premium experiences than the casual tourist who's shopping around for the cheapest ticket on any carrier that will take them on their annual vacation. So how can we use that segmentation that Business IQ provides, bring that business awareness into the infrastructure and automate the infrastructure based on the value of that user? These are all some of the really cool things that we're working on. So I'm going to show you a little more about how that works in a minute. The other networking use case I want to share is around triaging and root cause. And this is one that I think everybody would expect us to go address. It's if you got the world's best networking infrastructure and the best networking insight, shouldn't you correlate that with the world's best application intelligence to be able to detect very quickly if it's a database problem, if it's a network problem, or if it's anything in between? So let's dig a little bit deeper. And I want to start back with the premium experiences use cases a bit further. A typical e-commerce example, most of us can relate to it, but any e-commerce site might have 200 different transactions, business transactions or user journeys that can be done inside of this application. But as an app owner, the person most responsible for the revenue and the user engagement of that application, you really care about just a handful of critical journeys. What if I could identify those critical journeys and provide a guaranteed higher optimal performance for those specific examples? Maybe that is back to the keynote, a loan processing business process, or maybe that is a checkout process in the retail example. So within the AppDynamics suite of products, you have the ability with business journeys to identify the key business outcomes that you want to measure, that you want to track, and how they impact the performance of your business. Once you have that journey mapped out, the next step is to specifically map anything impacting that business journey to the business transactions that make up that. So the microtransactions that effectively make up that journey. And those could be things like add to cart or checkout. When you label those two capabilities and you effectively highlight them as premium transactions, the capability then provides, with the core infrastructure products that Cisco offers, the ability to set policy in the cloud, policy in the data center, and policy in the network to prioritize those experiences above other transactions that may be flowing through. So let's take an example. Retail shopping app. Some end user is mobile shopping on their mobile device. AppDynamics has this end user monitoring capability that allows us to instrument with rigor and detail every transaction going through that mobile app. And what AppD does is that as the user is looking and working through that application, we are monitoring every single click and we're learning from how users flow through that application to improve our baselines and our benchmarks and our intelligence about how the app is working. As we're doing that, we're noticing which transactions are considered premium and which ones are just sort of run rate, less important. For those premium transactions, we can then label them with a correlation ID that allows us to then prioritize that in the network policy, in the data center policy, within the environment, through products like Cisco Application-Centric Infrastructure and Cisco Tetration Analytics. These products are deployed at thousands of customers that have built data centers and cloud environments all over the world with the idea that you should be able to control policy based on a certain set of business parameters that are important to your business. And now you, as the owner of this retail app, you can now begin to define a premium experience for your most important users, for their most important transactions, and at the same time, from an IT ops point of view, this gives you the opportunity to reduce costs of adding excess capacity that may not be required to offer that high quality of service. So pretty cool stuff. This cannot be done with the traditional APM tool. Now we're going to shift gears and talk about root cause. The ability to bring application, network, cloud telemetry together to be able to find root cause very, very quickly. That's the kind of the core of what these two capabilities should be able to do together. So Cisco's got a number of network monitoring products. We collect telemetry from switches, from routers, from edge devices, and we can bring all that together and correlate that data to help customers figure out if they do have a networking issue. Is it in the data center switch? Is it on a server? Is it somewhere on the last mile? But that rich telemetry is widely available to us. But it oftentimes has resided in a silo of network performance monitoring tools. Now with the combination of AppDynamics' Business IQ and business transaction data, as well as our new network visibility module within AppD, we can now correlate the network flow traffic specifically to the user transaction in the APM product to be able to find root cause of an issue before it becomes a big problem. So as an example, what you're seeing here is a network monitoring dashboard coming from our DNA Center, which is our next generation network monitoring and orchestration product. And what it does is it offers a network health score for every transaction in the network that's flowing through it. And so the key insight that we figured out working with the engineers from both teams is that there's a correlation ID that we can pass at the application level that can be mapped specifically to the network flows that are going through the DNA Center. So in other words, what this gives you as an ops person, the ability to map your application health score next to your network health score. And if there is an issue and one of them are yellow or green or red, you can drill down into each one of these user experiences and enriched with much deeper telemetry about what root causes can be. And we all know within AppDynamics, once we surface something's in the red, we start collecting snapshots and code level diagnostics that allows us to really understand very quickly where in the code there may be a problem. The same is true in the networking products. Once Cisco networking products identifies an issue somewhere in the network, it then collects a much richer set of telemetry that can allow us to deeply figure out maybe what specific switch port might be the problem in the network. So very cool, groundbreaking things that we're doing with Cisco networking. Okay, we're going to shift gears and now talk about cloud. And I know just from the keynote today, our conversations with many of you, cloud migration, multi-cloud management, these are things top of mind for each of us. And within Cisco, one of the key theses for buying AppDynamics was that we wanted to bring much more tooling to help customers with their cloud migrations. So we've got two use cases that I want to walk you through today around product integration direction with cloud. The first one is isolated to much more like, let's say you have a cloud, a private cloud data center footprint, and within that, today, you can use AppDynamics to instrument performance, predict capacity that you might require, and ultimately help you really understand what's happening on your cloud infrastructure at any time. But we also have products called Cisco Workplace Optimization Manager that specializes in moving workloads within a cloud to the best possible servers to optimize capacity. So whether that's a VM or a container or whatever it might be, it allows you to be much more prescriptive in mapping supply and demand of your compute infrastructure with the relevant workloads. So how do we bring those two elements together? Real-time performance data with capacity and workload planning. Now, what happens in the environment where you just want to have multiple clouds and you want to manage orchestration across AWS and Azure and perhaps a public cloud and a private cloud environment? You need the ability to have an orchestration layer above the infrastructure itself that allows you to set policy and a profile of your application configuration once, and being able to use that on any cloud infrastructure, regardless of what service provider it may be. So the way we do this is very simple, and it's very much alike the way we did the networking example. Within AppD, we can correlate all of the critical business transactions. We're baselining those with real-time machine learning. We take those application intelligence baselines. We also take the infrastructure performance that we collect from our infrastructure monitoring products, like our hardware, server hardware or our networking hardware. We correlate those transactions together, and then we can do is using machine learning, begin to recommend and optimize how best to manage your capacity within your single environment or even burst to a public cloud. And that's where the orchestration and cloud bursting capability comes in. So let's talk about that retail shopping example all over again. The beginning is very much the same. AppD is instrumenting, it's learning in real time, and it's providing those insights back to an orchestration layer, an automation layer. In this case, the orchestration and automation is Cisco's Cloud Center for multi-cloud management and Cisco's Workload Optimization Manager for private cloud workload optimization within a single compute infrastructure to be able to reach into our core server products like HyperFlex or UCS, our Unified Compute System, and being able to optimize those environments based on the needs of the end user and the business transactions flowing through the application. The benefits to the users here are very much around the IT ops needs. It's about reducing costs, better optimization of your performance, and faster root cause analysis if you do have a performance bottleneck. Okay, shifting gears. And this one's a little bit more forward-looking, a little more aspirational, but one that I think is incredibly relevant if you have any responsibility for security in your business. We all know security is the top of mind issue for many CIOs. We also know it has a huge impact on their jobs. It has a huge impact on revenue for companies impacted by a breach. And so Cisco naturally has a very important role to play in the world of cybersecurity as the enterprise leader in security. And what's interesting is when we bought AppDynamics, one of the first things we heard from many of our security customers was, well, wait a second, you guys are instrumenting every single application. You've got real-time performance data that's critical, and it could tell us what's impacting our business. But what if you could map that against the threat intelligence database that you're collecting from your security products? And think about it from the context of, how do I figure out whatever performance issues that might be impacting my application that may be coming from a security breach, some type of botnet, some type of malware that's slowing down a host. And if there is a particular issue, how can the network or the environment itself defend itself against that attack? So let me give you an example. This is one of my neighbors is a head of IT operations and security and all of that for a large online retailer. And we were having drinks, actually. This was right around the holiday season last year. It was even before we bought AppDynamics. And he was talking about how he spent like 3 days trying to figure out why certain part of his application was not performing very well. And this was during the holiday season, so it was very impact to revenue. And he had mentioned that it turned out after all the debugging they did for 3 or 4 days, it was a set of botnets that were attacking a bunch of servers inside of their cloud environment and they had a hard time sort of isolating that, identifying that, and blocking it out. So one of the use cases that we started talking to him about was, well, wait a second, because within the instrumentation of AppDynamics, we know about every single IP that's hitting a host at any given time on your application. If we can correlate those IP addresses with our massive threat database made up of billions and billions of records that map all bad actors on the internet in real time, we can immediately identify a botnet and allow you to block it through our orchestration products. Cisco today has 250 former NSA hacker type PhD, R&D people that do nothing but all day long scour the internet for threats. And their job is to take real-time data and push it into all of our security products so that our customers in real time block the most modern threats. That has created an enormous database of intelligence that we can now map between AppDynamics and our security business. So one of the things we're very excited about here is the ability to, again, calculate business transactions the same way we've done in the other examples, but now instead of recommending performance optimizations, we're going to map those against anomalies and threats and vulnerabilities that might be impacting the software that we're running our application on in the first place. This gives us enormous opportunity to provide additional value to CIOs, to IT operations, to security officers who are very much worried about runtime application security. But it's not just about recognizing there's a problem. Cisco also has security enforcement and orchestration products that allows us to dynamically take a threat and block that threat in real time, whether it's a malware, a botnet, or any other type of attack. And being able to do that within the data center environment, do it in the enterprise network environment, or even in the cloud. So we're very excited about what we could do with security. So same example applies here. AppDynamics instruments the mobile app. That same data is then fed, in this case, to the Cisco Defense Orchestrator, which sets a security policy across their entire security estate, ranging from the network to the endpoints and even out to the public cloud if necessary. So it's ultimately building that self-healing, self-learning, and now self-defending application environment. Okay, the last use case I'm going to share with you is probably the easiest and most pragmatic, but it's the one that I think all of us can sort of empathize with. We all have been there. We've talked a lot today about fixing risks. We talked a lot today about faster remediation and better predictions. But what happens when you actually have a problem and you need to have a war room type experience? And that's really where Cisco's collaboration portfolio can very much benefit AppDynamics. Two key use cases. The first is many of us who use AppD today have interoperability with various alerting and chat ops and business messaging products, things like Slack as an example. Cisco also has a platform called Spark, which effectively has business messaging capability, and it's optimized for more real-time video conferencing and collaboration, very similar to the expansion of what we've done with WebEx, which is a multi-billion-dollar SaaS business around collaboration within Cisco. So the ability for us to take that alerting capability and quickly go from a business messaging, chat ops type of environment with your colleagues in a war room, a virtual war room, and then escalate that even into a live meeting experience with a click of a button. And that's super powerful in the case that you have a remote team, maybe it's a database team, the network team, the app team. You need to speak in real time using Cisco Spark to be able to elevate that into a real-time video conference and then de-escalate that back to a chat room type environment. So, similar process. We monitor the transactions here, and then instead of just sending a signal to some orchestration product, we're actually sending the alerts in parallel to the collaboration suite of products that we have that allows us to spin up that war room or open up that new channel or that new messaging room so that you can have that live back-to-back conversations with your ops team. So we've talked a lot about different use cases things that we're extremely excited about, everything from networking to data center, cloud, security, and collaboration. But I think if I were going to leave you with a couple key messages today, the first one is that Cisco is pouring fuel on this jet engine, which is AppDynamics. This business is a rocket. It's been a rocket ship for many years. The business has accelerated since Cisco bought AppDynamics, but we're not stopping there. We're investing more and more in innovation. The R&D budget at AppD prior to the acquisition was growing about 50% year over year, pretty much in line with what the revenue trajectory of AppDynamics was. Since then, Cisco has invested a significantly amount more R&D budget so we can realize some of the capabilities that we talked about today and some of the things that we talked about at the keynote earlier. We've bumped up our R&D budget to 80% year over year growth. We've also been able to take advantage of Cisco's very large balance sheet, $70 billion in cash, and they've been very accommodating for us to push forward an M&A agenda to help augment and accelerate the AppDynamics business. Today was just the first example of that. We've also brought some machine learning and infrastructure expertise from the Cisco machine into AppDynamics. And while machine learning has been one of those concepts that's getting a lot of buzz now because it's in the middle of the hype cycle, machine learning has been at the core of the security business for the last 25 years. And Cisco has been using it in many of our security products for a very long time. So bringing some of that expertise into AppD is a critical additional benefit that Cisco has been able to provide us. In addition, we're taking advantage of some of the massive go-to-market capability that Cisco can offer. Things like buying programs, the ability for Cisco customers to be able to now get started with AppDynamics by bundling AppDynamics with many of our cloud and data center products. So if you're building out your own private cloud infrastructure today and you're building on HyperFlex or UCS, we're offering new packages bundled at a great price where we can start selling AppDynamics and that cloud infrastructure together in one offer, pre-configured and optimized to work well together. The same is true if you want to take just cloud management software and AppDynamics. Leave your infrastructure to AWS or a public cloud provider. We can provide just that cloud management, multi-cloud management, and AppDynamics capability together in a simple bundle. So we're very much leaning in on making it easier for Cisco to help accelerate AppDynamics through seeding more of this technology to more of our large-scale customers around the world. And lastly, I just want to talk about the access to partners. You know, AppDynamics, as a relatively new company, was just getting started with building out its partner strategy. And we had a handful of very amazing partners that we built our business on for many years. But now part of Cisco, we've got access to an even broader set of partners and even more might to bring additional services, whether it's infrastructure related, whether it's consultative related, whether it's anything in between. In fact, yesterday we spent time with our top 30 partners, AppD partners, and we had a great dialogue about the possibilities of how we can help each of you guys in this room with new value-added services from these partners to expand what AppDynamics and other cloud technologies can do to help transform each of your businesses. So lastly, and most importantly, we are here to help you. And to kind of summarize the key elements of what we talked to today, I think where Cisco can really help is, number one, we provide the broadest, the deepest, most unified set of capabilities of monitoring and visibility across the industry. Everything from the endpoint all the way through to the network. We take that and we combine it to provide a massive data set for machine intelligence. A great example of this is, if you think about Google and Facebook, why they've been so extremely successful in the consumer internet space is because they've been collecting data about all of us for so many years that they've built an amazing personalized services and an amazing advertising business centered around it. In the IT environment, that same race is happening right now. In the end, the best machine intelligence is going to go to those who own the data. And the broadest set of data ultimately will win. Your algorithms are only as good as your data. And so bringing together the world's best data center around networking, security, and application intelligence, we believe gives us a very strong footing to continue to build that self-healing and that self-learning environment. We talked a lot about automation and orchestration today. Cisco has enormous capability here, whether it's in cloud orchestration, software-defined networking, and everything in between. But within AppDynamics, we also have very, very strong partnerships with other third parties in the automation game, in the orchestration game. Most prominently, I would say ServiceNow is one of our biggest partners, and one I just spent a lot of time with Monday this week, where we've got a deep relationship with hundreds of customers around the world that have integrated ServiceNow and AppDynamics together to provide better remediation and better orchestration once incidents occur. And lastly, thinking about Cisco, the power of it, the global scale, the worldwide support capability, the massive financial resources, the large M&A pool that we can draw from. This is a massive investment that we can put behind the AppD business to accelerate this journey for you. So I'm really excited to be a part of it. We get inspired every time we talk to you and we hear about your journey. And we think that as your transformation is progressing, some of these new technologies that I talked about today can help accelerate that.